Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is now 7:59 a.m. You're listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. It's Wednesday, the 26th of July, and we've got the weather. We'll do that for you guys first, but we've got a great show and a great conversation for you guys today. We have with us founder of Simply Destinee, Liza Oliva Perez. Good morning to you. How you feeling?
I'm pretty good this morning.
Did I get the name right?
Yes.
All right, cool. They can't see it, but you started laughing when I said that. I was like, did a brother say it wrong or something?
I'm still not used to the second last name yet.
Oh, okay. Liza Oliva. All right. So we are happy to have you on the show and learn about Simply Destinee. There's many people, as we talked before the mic came on, probably some people out there who are unfamiliar.
Yes.
You still meet people who don't know about it. We meet people who don't know. Good morning, Roy. Never heard of it. Well, y'all got to get out of the caves that you live in and learn about a great organization today.
Most definitely.
And then we'll talk also about the girls' empowerment event that's coming up.
Yes.
As well. Let people know where they can find the link and follow you guys on Facebook too.
Yes, definitely.
Now, before we get into all that, though, I know what you're thinking. Could we get some of that weather, Curtis? Oh, you know what? We'll do that for you. The weather's on the screen for you guys to see. Now, here's the thing about the weather. Actually, let me give you the second part of the weather right there. So hot and humid conditions today going into Friday. 95 degrees to 105 degrees is the afternoon heat indices all the way through. As you guys can see, clusters of thunderstorms, particularly on Friday, it says. Some rain may provide for temporary cooling today. Heat exhaustion.
Umbrellas.
Right, exactly. Get your umbrella. Young people don't have umbrellas anymore, though.
No, they have hoodies.
Right? And then it gets soaked and the hair is messed up. Mom, heat exhaustion and heat stroke are potential dangers as well, so protect yourself. Now, there's the forecast. 95 degrees today is the high, 74 degrees tonight, tomorrow 96, Friday 97, hot and humid all the way through with the potential for thunderstorms as well. So be aware of that, ladies and gentlemen. Be really aware of that. Okay, so first of all, the last time I saw you guys was in the 4th of July parade. You guys are marching as a very impressive unit. It was really good to see. Great to see a good community organization out there. How did it feel to be among the people and be representing once again?
I love being in the parades, and I think the thing that we look forward to the most is when Clayton announces us, because then it's like this whole big thing. It's like this spectacular show.
Right.
And it's just like, yeah. But I mean, it's always a good thing to be out there and just be out there with the kids and let them see all the things that they can participate in.
I noticed something too when I watch the groups, yours as well, especially the groups that have a mental health focus or a social related focus. I noticed that the young people are always in front, right?
Yeah.
And then the founders and the other people, you guys are in the back, right? Just you letting them get their shine. I like that because it's very powerful for them. Young kids feel good when they're able to lead. It's
Nobody wants to see me dance. Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah, so they come out and do the dance, and it's really cool. And yeah, Clayton does a really good job with that.
Yes.
He shouts you guys back from way down. And now another group. These people, I love them. Here they come. Simply Destinee.
And then the kids just get so excited just to hear them because it's their recognition,
Right.
their recognition of everything that they do in the community.
Right. Simply Destinee Youth Center.
Yes.
What is the mission of Simply Destinee?
When we first started, it was all that we would say is we were suicide prevention. But what we realized throughout the years is that there's so much more that goes into mental health. So, in the last few years, we've kind of revamped our mission to just mental health, awareness and working on wellness. That's our big thing this year, because I think a lot of people don't realize, what mental health really encompasses.
I think that they have a very superficial idea of it. They just think that, they're not unpacking it.
Exactly.
They hear mental health, and that's enough for them.
I one time heard that someone didn't want to bring their child to our program because all we talked about was death. And it was like, no, it's actually quite the opposite.
Right.
We talk about life.
Right.
Because we want these kids to see that there's so much to live for. And, the unpacking part is what we've come to realize. Like, it's not just, mental health means somebody's crazy, they're, schizophrenic. Yeah, all of that goes into it. But the reality is there's so much more. There's, food scarcity, there's homelessness, there's, so many different topics, toxic family unity, there's just so many things that affect our mental health. And people, don't want to talk about those things.
How to get to that? How to get to the part about the they must be crazy? How did it get to that?
I think that's a stigma and a taboo in a lot of families. I know my family was one of them. Mm-hmm. I can still recall talking about mental health with my mom and her making comments like, that's for crazy people. We're not crazy. And it was like, I get that, but we are going through some stuff, and this was when my girls were younger, and she was not accepting of it. And it was because she didn't understand what mental health really meant.
Right. Now, you also mentioned that, food insecurity and things like that. For a lot of people, for those who do know, that, suicide is just, indeed the worst outcome.
Yes.
But people and the way that they feel, the way that they treat others, how they're taking care of their health or how they're not, those are so many other indicators and things that can be going on before a person may consider harming themselves. Yeah. And maybe all of that stuff is not what's seen. Is that accurate?
I would say, yeah, because there were so many times where I would meet even students in our program that would tell me they didn't have lights. They would tell me they didn't have food. We had a student once who used to sleep on the park bench. So he would come to the program because, and this has been a long running joke with us, is we always have macaroni and cheese and ramen noodles in the studio because you just never know who needs a hot meal. And it may not be much of a hot meal, but it's something that they might not have that access to. So we had that student who would sleep in the park bench, come in, grab a bowl of mac and cheese, and then be surrounded by people his age and feel like he was accepted somewhere, right, regardless of what he was going through outside.
Right. How many of those kids are there in Aurora?
Lots.
A lot more than we think about.
A lot more than we think about. I mean, even just the food scarcity part. Think of all the kids that are on school lunches.
Right.
That's because those families are not meeting income guidelines to say that, hey, I can go out and that food scarcity takes me to something that I talk about a lot, and that's clean eating, because nobody taught us clean eating when we were growing up.
Clean eating.
Yes. So like veggies,
right.
Just access to, fruit.
Right.
Things that, some people take for granted that, I have a whole bowl of fruit sitting at home. And, how many times has it gone bad?
You're right. And you know what? You bring up a very interesting, because now there's a term for it, food deserts. There's a term for it now. Where I used to live in the city. I used to live on the west side. There was a plethora of fast food joints, but yes, the only grocery store, onions, plums, pears. Yeah, you had to go to North Avenue and Cicero. You had to go on a quest for that.
And think about that, though, in terms of home life. How many kids are actually getting a home-cooked meal with vegetables, with fruit as a dessert instead of a piece of cake?
Fries or something like that, right.
And then we have so many working parents. So you think about all those things, think about all those children that are going through those situations.
Right. Now, you guys are located at I know the address, 122 West Downer Place.
Yes.
That's right, in the
Yes.
Legal Arts Building.
Yes.
I remember. Yes, absolutely. I've been a supporter.
Thank you.
I've been a supporter
Thank you.
and a fan of the mission, so with sharing you guys' stuff or just shouting you out, absolutely, man. I'm a big supporter of what you guys do. Yep. I do want to ask about some of the we're going to talk about social media though too, kind of at the latter part of this too. But I kind of want to stick with the parents and the household situation. So a lot of times our parents, especially if they are parents who are from immigrant families, a lot of times our parents may not have been even given the fig leaf of thought about health other than just your body, right? So mental health, something being wrong with you is somebody else's kid. That's what happens in that family.
I call it the not my kid syndrome.
The not my kid syndrome, right? And I'm curious, it seems like our parents were taught just to get by no matter what. We need to eat or pay the mortgage or the rent or whatever the case may be. And years and years and years and years and generations of that. Your grandma telling your mom, now she's doing what she was, right? It seems like, I'm just guessing here, it seems like years and years of that is like, right? You're cutting through the onion and you're trying so hard. I feel like that's probably the biggest factor in the community aspect of mental health and not talking about things. What do you think?
Oh, I could say so much about that. But what I'm going to say right now is that my son, and this is why I think so many people have a problem with the younger generation, because my son was the one to call me out on my BS and say, Mom, that's not reality.
Right.
That's your reality. That's not my reality. And it took a moment to sit there and think, like, he's right. Times have changed. Look at everything we think mass shootings are normal. How do we not think that our kids are going to have mental health challenges from having to constantly live in a world where they're surviving? They're not thriving, they're surviving.
Right.
You could combine that with, what we were just talking about, food scarcity. There's so many families here that are immigrant families that have no access to anything because most of them are undocumented. So those children that are here are also going through their challenges as well. I put a post up the other day. One of the things that I do every year is I try to make sure that our kids have school supplies. And I don't have to do it. And I've had a lot of people say, you guys do too much. You should tone it down a little bit. And it's like, I do these things because I know what it was like to grow up in a family where I didn't have access to stuff.
Right.
Because like you said, this past couple years, I've been going through my own healing journey. But I came from a toxic family, and I love my mom just as much as my brother loves my mom. But the reality is there were things that she taught us that weren't right. There were things that, like you said, she probably learned from her mom.
Right.
And then I learned from her. And then now dealing with my son and my daughter who will say, that's not how life is. It's like they're right. We need to break those cycles, which I'm big on. We need to break those cycles. And one of the things that I remember was, my mom never asked for help. She was the type of person that I'll find a way to get it done.
Right.
That was my mentality for a long time. I will find a way to even if I was stressed, crying, whatever, I would find a way on my own instead of asking for help.
Right.
And nowadays there are so many places that offer resources, but families won't go ask for help.
Because they don't want to be seen in the waiting room. They don't want it. Right. That's why.
And they don't want to they don't want to jeopardize, especially undocumented families. They don't want to jeopardize any situations for themselves. I had a mom in the group who had a special needs son and said she never asked for help because she didn't want to be put on some timeline where people would have access to her information.
Right.
18 years.
Right.
She never asked for help.
Right.
And it's like, but the resources are there. So for me, that's one of the things that, Marty and I always talk about is like teaching the kids. That's what mental health is, asking for help. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean we're crazy. It just means we're going through a challenge or a difficult time and we need some help.
Are there steps being besides organizations like yourself and the work that you guys are doing, what are you seeing? Are you seeing it get better? Is the needle moving in any way? I know that you guys have many success stories, but in overall, in what we're talking about, do you see the needle moving in a positive direction?
Honestly, I feel like I see the big thing on the rise right now is the fentanyl. Like You've seen so many kids die from fentanyl poisoning or alcohol or whatever. And I feel like that's what kind of brings me back to the mental health part is like, what do kids do when they need to cope? Drugs and alcohol. Self-medicate. And, for all these people out here saying, oh, it's the new generations, we're not giving them the skills to learn how to manage their emotions.
Right.
We're not giving them the skills to be able to work through some of look at domestic violence. What is that? It's an escalation of a miscommunication. And most people, women that are going through domestic violence, they don't want to ask for help.
Right.
So I feel like a lot of times, children are feeling like, oh, if I ask for help, then I'm a burden to my family. So what do? We don't ask.
Right. I wonder also in the context of everything that we're talking about, with the big mental health issue, I see a lot more focus from large organizations that seem to be trying to make connections at the local level. Like I'm thinking of like Rush Copley, for example. I see now so many programs that are available and they put on there no cost and things like that. And that's a good chunk of the news that we share. I see a lot more bigger organizations trying to make that grassroots level stuff. You go to, Prisco Center, you go to these little events now and they got a booth there. I think the problem has become so big.
Yeah.
It's affecting families that they can't say that anymore. Now it is their kids. It's affecting so many families that now the big dogs had to say like, okay, wait a minute. No fee for the services. We got to address this issue because that used to also be an issue too.
It is an issue. And I think there are still many people that kind of undermined it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, look around you, we're seeing so many kids die at a young age.
Right.
And that should not be an acceptable thing.
Right.
Whether it's gang violence, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's suicide, there's so many things. And the thing that gets me every time, and, my brother and I have had this conversation often. When my daughter passed, I struggled to put how she died in her obituary. So what I have noticed throughout the last 13 years is when parent doesn't want to say how their child died, they say passed away suddenly. That's what the newspaper will always tell you. Mm-hmm. That's like indicative of there's more to the story.
Right.
So now every time I see an obituary for a child and I see that, I feel like the need is still there. Until we can talk about what's really going on in our communities and our children, this problem's going to continue. Right.
The time is 8:17 a.m. Good morning. Cindy Morales is here. Good morning to you, Cindy. Dora Sanchez Soto is here. Good morning to you as well. Michael Rayford, Luz Elna, Brambila, Sue Withrow. So many great people here this morning. We're having and Valeria, who is on vacation in España.
Oh, must be nice.
Yeah, it is nice. She put the pictures on Facebook.
Oh.
Paella, all that. In my life, I've known 4 people who've passed away due to suicide. 2 of them were in my high school years. The other 2, one purposely relapsed off drugs and alcohol. And the other young man, he unfortunately took his life. He'd gotten divorced and took his life. And when I look at each of them and their stories, all of them were from different nationalities. All of them were in different points of their life with having a high, right? A high moment, like a good, positive moment. None of them were indigent or extremely poor. And with the exception of the one gentleman I was talking about, he was the only one with drugs as the issue. So the whole thing, there is no template.
No.
There's no template for that. And that, to me, makes it serious.
That's when I started talking about the not my child syndrome, because a lot of parents think, you know, oh, I provide for my child. I do this, I do that, you know. My child's fine. But I think sometimes us, even as parents, we think like, you know, there's just so much that goes on. We think we have it handled. And I can personally say I didn't have it handled. Like, I was going through some stuff of my own, like you said. There were traumatic events that took place. When a child is constantly witnessing all of that, seeing, you know, traumatic events, seeing violence in the homes, seeing food scarcity, like there's so many, like you're right, there's no cutout situation. Everybody's going to go through something different. But the more that we can give our children tools to learn how to cope through those things, they're going to be better off. But if a child learns that they're just supposed to, this is something that, and I've said this from my own childhood, is I can recall a time that I fell, and my mom's thing she would tell us to be quiet until we were done crying. Now, what does that do to a child? If you're constantly being told to be quiet, to not cry, to not do all these things, then eventually you shut out those emotions.
Right.
They don't go away. You still feel those things, but you just learn to kind of block them out.
Right.
And then eventually you're going through traumatic events, you're going through life challenges, you're going through boyfriends and girlfriends, you're going through relationships. Grief isn't just death. Grief is so many things.
Right.
It's relationships, it's life, it's everything. And so when our children don't have those tools, then how do they navigate those challenges?
How were you able to cope?
I wasn't for a long time. Right. I can say that for a long time it was hard. And, you know, I actually had a conversation with a friend the other day, and I said, thank you for loving me when I wasn't lovable. Because there were times in my life where I was angry, I was going through things, and I didn't know how to express what I was feeling in those moments and get through it. And in those times, you can lash out at people that probably don't deserve it.
Right. Plus, the entire grief process it's unique.
Oh, yeah.
To the individual. It's entirely unique to the individual. I do think that for the youth, and because Aurora's big,
yes,
you know, 4 counties of area, I do think that the closer you are to resources, the more apt you'll be to perhaps use them or definitely know about them and hear about them and everything. So I'm curious, do you meet young people from places other than Aurora or maybe some of our surrounding areas who come seeking help? So
in Simply Destinee, yes, we have met kids from as far as Plano, Yorkville, West Chicago, Downers Grove, and Chicago. I am also a teacher in Chicago public schools. Okay. So I also see it there too. And that's, I guess, one of the ways that I know this isn't just here. I know this isn't just a few isolated incidents. Mm-hmm. This is everywhere. And like I said, the reality is there are lots of children who, you know, have, like you said, every different situation you can think of under the sun. You know, they may be at a home where it's a single parent. They may be in a blended family situation. They may be in a situation where there's no food. There is so many, like, the list is endless.
Right.
But the reality is they're all struggling.
Does it give you any sense? And I work for the Neighbor Project. So families who are, you know, we deal with families in many different stages of their own journey. Some of them have kids, some people have kids and some don't. Does it give you at all, though, a sense of because you're able to see it. You can identify it, right?
I've gotten pretty good.
You can identify it by the behavior, by the disposition of right? You can see it now. Is that helpful? Do you?
Yeah, for me it is. So
Okay.
like, and I'll give you an example. Like I did summer school. I subbed for summer school, and I was doing attendance, and a student walks in 10 minutes late. I didn't really think anything of it, but she sat down with this face on her, and I was like, something's wrong. So I went over and I said, "Are you okay?"
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, I'm okay." All right. Left her alone. I said, "Are you sure? Because you look kind of sad."
Right.
"Oh, it's because I saw this and, you know, it kind of bothered me. But I'm okay." All right. We go to lunch. All of a sudden, I turn around. This girl's bawling her eyes out, like tears.
Mm-hmm.
Eyes are bloodshot red now at this point. And I'm like, "What happened? I thought you were okay." And she's like, "Oh, you know, this and that's going on." Had a full conversation with her. And by the end of the day, she was a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But I could tell just by her body language, by her mannerisms, that something else was going on. And the one thing that I've learned through my own healing is that there's always an underlying issue. So we could come in and I could be crying and tell you, "Oh, it's because I saw this, that, and the other," but there's really something else going on.
Right.
And so, you know, I kept trying to talk to her throughout the day, but I don't normally, like, you know, work with this student because she's not my grade level. But it really just resonates to what I was trying to say, and that's that, you know, now I can pick up on certain, because I look at, you know, kids will walk in and then I'll be like, "What's wrong?
Right.
What happened?" "Nothing." "No, you're not your normal self today."
Right, exactly.
So, you know, there's always something else that, like I said, they don't want to talk about, and that's understandable, but that's why we need to teach our children these, you know, tools and tips and resources. And if you can't talk to me, and I tell this to my own kids, if you can't talk to me, who can you go talk to?
Right.
Because you need a person in your life that you can go. It could be an aunt, could be a counselor, could be anybody, but you got to find someone that you can go talk to.
You do. And not only that, for young people, and parents perhaps more so, is that you should also pray that if you're not the person your kids are talking to, that it should be a counselor or somebody, because there are many people out there with a terrible message who would love to talk to your kids with an idle mind. And that's how so many kids end up, I'm thinking of the Kane County Juvenile Justice Center now. You know, it is just, unfortunately, there are kids in the system from 13 on up.
I mean, look at the movie The Sound of Freedom right now, human trafficking. How many girls need somebody to talk to, and then they're being groomed online and they don't even realize it.
And I wanted to ask too, music saved my life.
Yes.
That I want to detail, but I'm going to do something new. I'm going to serve that up. We'll be right back with the Music Saved My Life. I'm going to talk about those commercials, the book club, and then the budgeting workshop that we have real quick. So we're going to go to a brief commercial until I get a button. There's really no easy way to do it, So
All right.
the time is 8:28 a.m. Good morning, everyone. Karen Caputo, Stephen Hendry, Tracy Duran, Natalie from Talented 10 says, hey, Liza, good morning to you as well. Eleanor Fernandez as well, good morning. Luz says, sometimes we don't accept there is a problem. Very true. And Emily says, they're always welcome at Zen Loft. I have microwavable quinoa bowls and fruit and free yoga and meditation videos they can watch if I'm not available to teach. They can work in the shop on commission and make things to sell. I'd be honored to support you guys.
Oh,
Thank you very much for that, Emily. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of very important things to talk about to you guys in detail to you. And we're going to start with this great back to school event that's going on and coming up. So this is going to be this Saturday at the Prisco Center. As you can see on your screen, it's a free event and open to the public. This is presented by the African American Health Coalition and Blue Cross Blue Shield. Prisco Center, 150 West Illinois Avenue from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. this Saturday. Free farmers market produce, backpacks, school supplies, back-to-school resources, and a whole lot more. There's also going to be a $5 and under pop-up shop there. So all of the organizations or businesses that you see on the side there on the left bottom are going to be having items for $5 and under. Cash only, ladies and gentlemen, cash only. Next is a free first-time home buyer seminar taking place this evening at 6 p.m. at Everlasting Word Church, right up the street from where we are right now, 22 North Highland on the west side. Are you interested in buying your first home? This seminar, presented by the Neighbor Project and many great sponsors, will provide you with all of the information you need. Spanish-speaking counselors will also be there as well. This event is free and open to the public. The QR code is right there for you to register, but I'll tell you a little secret. If you just show up there and say that you heard about it on Good Morning Aurora, you will be welcomed. They'll be like, what? You want some water?
we got you.
We got you. So there is your home buying seminar. And the next thing that I want to tell you guys about is the budgeting workshop. This is presented by the City of Aurora's Power Women Group. Now, the Power Group is an acronym which escapes me at the moment, but it's going to be August 14th from noon to 1 p.m. at 77 South Broadway. That's the huge City of Aurora department building at Benton and Broadway. And budgeting is just one of the great topics that will be discussed, and this is presented by the Power Women Group at the City of Aurora and the Aurora FEC, the Financial Empowerment Center. Learn about ways that you and your family can reduce your debt, increase your savings, and the potential for home ownership for you as well. Time is 8:31 a.m. You're listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast, and our guest is, also CBS Chicago change maker. But we'll get to that next, too. Our guest is Liza Oliva Perez with us, founder of Simply Destinee on the show. All right. So, music saved my life. Please explain. Please explain.
So growing up in our household, like I said, there were a lot of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing I remember the most was Saturday mornings. She would make us get up at the crack of dawn, and she would put the music full blast, and we would clean the house and, do errands and just all this different stuff. But music was always a staple in our lives, and that was something we carried on. And, I used to like to sing when I was in junior high. I used to try and be in the choir. And Marty was a choreographer, so so music was always a part of who we were, as far back as I can remember. And the biggest thing that that was important for that phrase was that when you think about music, think about if you're in a really bad time, you could find music to support how you feel and kind of just feel what you're feeling.
Right.
Same thing if you're happy. Same thing if you're mad. There's music that literally, and recently we went to Tennessee, my husband and I, and my mom would make us listen to everything, and I mean everything. And we went to Tennessee, and I was I saw the Patsy Cline Museum. And I was in heaven, and he's like, "Who's Patsy Cline?" And I was like, "You've never heard Patsy Cline?"
Yeah.
Like, I was offended. And I was like, when I think about it, music was our go-to. If you were going through something, music was the go-to. And so we went to the Patsy Cline Museum, and the whole way home, that's all we listened to, because then he kind of got hooked on her. And last year for my birthday, he brought me a Patsy Cline impersonator.
Oh,
It was the best thing ever. But what it brings us back to is that music is literally like a lifesaver. And you can use music for exercise. You have music for meditation. So music really is a universal language of how we feel.
It is. It's important though too, as you mentioned about the music that the music you're listening to and the frame of mind you may be in and what you're seeking for, what you're searching for. I don't listen to certain music anymore. As with everybody on earth, certain parts of my life weren't the best, and I know what I was listening to at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about like just rap and hip hop and all kinds of different stuff like that. I don't consume it anymore. It's because it has a lot to do with, and what we're talking about too, your mentality.
Yes. Mindset.
Your mindset, all of that. I don't consume it anymore. And it's interesting. My son just turned 11. I'm now that parent, and I get it. There will be no Little Dirk. There's none of that. There is none of that, because you understand mentality. You understand what you feed yourself, and what you see is what comes out of you, is what you produce.
So I say this even in my classroom. I tell my kids all the time, words have power.
Absolutely.
And so the biggest thing is, like, I have a 20-year-old at home, and I have my granddaughter who's about to be 15. And the biggest thing is that I let them listen, but then I tell them, listen to what you're listening to.
Right.
Listen to the lyrics of what you're listening to, and how does that signify who you are in your life?
Absolutely.
And I'm the same. There's certain music now that I just don't. It's just I can't do it.
No 14-year-old should be listening to Eazy-E.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Well, that's the thing. It's just like, when you think about it, though, we had one time somebody say something about the music that we, even play in the studio. And I thought to myself, one, the kids are listening to a lot worse.
True.
And two, we really need to try and understand why they're listening to that music.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reality is, do they feel that defines their life? Do they feel that that's who they want to personify?
Right.
Like, because if that's the case, then there's some work to do.
Right. Then there's an issue. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So music essentially can save your life.
Right.
And then when you take the whole other side of it, it's, there's statistics and, literature on it about how music is important.
Right.
So that is one of the reasons that, we would always say #music saved my life.
What have you noticed? Tracy Duran is here. Good morning. Anna Maria Barbu and Julia Lindbergh. Good morning to you. What are the ways that children are using to harm themselves?
Oh, the list is endless. And again, it takes us back to the not my child syndrome.
There's
because
a primacy of drugs now too. Yeah.
There's drugs. Yeah. There's this whole thing lately with fentanyl. There's obviously cutting. There's so much, but I think the biggest thing is a lot of people don't realize even the small things like overeating. I'm an emotional eater. I don't do drugs. I don't drink, occasionally I'll have a drink here and there, but I am not a drinker. I don't do drugs, but I am an emotional eater. And I can say that a lot of people think like, oh, how could that harm you? Down the road when your health is not the best, you're going to be like, wow, I did this to myself because I wasn't in the best state of mind during some of those times in my life. And what did I resort to? I resorted to food. So you can look at it however you want, but the reality is there are ways out there that we're harming ourselves and not even realizing it.
You mentioned, you talked about something happening in your household that really piqued my curiosity. Josue Pais, good morning. You said that your mom would wake you up and your siblings and make you clean and do chores.
Yes.
Perhaps a Saturday or Sunday morning. And she would blare the music. How loud would she play the music?
Oh, it was loud.
That's very interesting because that happens in black families too.
Saturday morning, it was blaring her Tejano music. And, we would get up and we'd clean and we'd do all the things that we were supposed to do to kind of like prepare us for the week. Because usually on Sundays was like her day off essentially. So Saturday mornings, early. And one thing I remember from my childhood was we always grew up in a 3-apartment building. So like we're as far back as I can remember, most of the places that we lived at, there would be 3 apartments. And it would be like my mom in one apartment, my aunt in another apartment, and my uncle in another apartment. That's how, I don't know how they did that.
Talking about Chicago brownstone style.
Almost, but here in Aurora.
Okay.
And she would put the music on and you would think like my uncles would probably be like, oh, here she goes, but no, I mean, it was literally a staple in our life. Music was never a bad thing.
I bring that up because the same thing happens in African American households, and I am purposely threading this needle because just like I said when we were 10 minutes into the show, I believe, and it's not just African American and Latino families though too. I believe that our cultural isms are responsible for our issues. They have a big part. They have a big part to play in it. Yes. Because the same thing was happening in my house. The same exact thing. 8 o'clock, get up.
Yeah.
You do the lawn. Mm-hmm. You mop the floor. Major chores. And Whitney Houston is blaring. Blaring, right? George Clinton is just blaring. And I do the same thing. now. I get my son up. I make him clean. And I just turn up Tribe Called Quest or whatever.
Well, we listen to like everything, Little John and Wu-Tang in my house, but
it's a new
and
day
Spanish
and age,
music
right?
too. But the reality is like I'm in the kitchen cooking.
Mm-hmm.
My husband will be like cleaning out his little man cave and whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we're doing, there's music playing.
Yeah.
And it's just always a remembrance, I guess, of like those things. But yeah, there's definitely music in my house. Yeah,
my dad just passed away, so I'm going through this thing. I haven't got out of it yet. I'm going through this thing where I'm like, man, because life, when you look at it, maybe the whole thing isn't toxic, but there's just toxic moments.
Oh yes,
right? Maybe it's not a war. It's just a series of battles, but they could be catastrophic. And I look back, right, at certain things, and this has kind of helped me deal with my grief, right? I look back at my parents were divorced. It wasn't like a nice or easy divorce. I guess there never are, right?
Yeah.
But I look back on it now and I think about all the things that I don't do that my parents used to do or say to me that used to upset me, so I just don't do that anymore. And now I'm like, man, you know what? They were doing the best they could, just being 2 young people with probably their own issues that were underlined, and who the hell knew? I mean, what was their story, right? My parents were 30 when they had me.
Yeah.
Everybody can think about where their mindset was when they were 30. Did you have kids or did you not? Did you have your grip on the whole parenting thing or did you not? So it's like, when you think about it, it's like, that's what makes me feel a little bit better about like what I'm doing in life now. Because I'm like, man, I get it,
I'm sorry for your loss, first of all. But I really, yes, that hit home for me too, because I think back to my mom, and this is something, I'm in therapy. I won't deny that. I literally realize now that my mom was doing the best that she could.
Yep.
And there was a long time that I kind of resented a lot of the things she did. But now I look back and I think to myself, like, she didn't know any other way.
Absolutely.
Her mom passed when she was 9. So how can I sit here and think she had all the answers when in reality she was a child raising herself?
Right.
And so now when I look at it, I think like, yeah, we went through hell. But the reality is I can't honestly say it was intentional.
Yep.
Because she was doing the best that she could.
Yep.
And now with my son, kind of like what you were talking about, the expectations, my son right now is 20 years old and he's like expecting life to be perfect. And I'm like,
homie,
you got a long way to go.
Right.
And
you'll never get the perfection part. You might get the P.
I just turned 50 this year and I barely feel like life's coming together.
Right.
So no, like life is not, they have these expectations of by 30, you're supposed to have a house and a family and this and that. And it's like, that's part of the toxic problem too, because we have these expectations that kids are supposed to meet these quotas.
Okay. Hold on. What time is it? It's 8:44. Perfect. That's a segue. Because I did want to talk about, as I mentioned, I did kind of want to talk about influences, and social media was one of them. But you brought up a great point. That was another thing too. If you look at the movies, right? That was American culture.
Yeah.
If you weren't married by 30, or I don't know what were you doing? You failed. You don't have a house, kids, 2.5 garage with the white picket fence, and are you even a woman? That
right.
was the whole ideology of typical American life being pushed
in
for
Hispanic families. They'll ask a girl if she does not have kids by a certain age, like, don't you plan on getting married? Don't you plan on having kids? And it's like, why does that have to be who we are as a woman? It's
like, damn, I got a college degree.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yo,
yeah. No, the story of life for everybody is not easy. But one of the problems that we're having is that everybody thinks it's just happening, it's only raining on them, and it's totally not. And all of these things are compounding the issue. Hold on. Tracy Duran says something interesting. She says, my mom used to do the same thing, blasting her music, mostly Neil Diamond and Air Supply.
I used to listen to them too.
Shout out Air Supply.
Motown.
And we deep clean everything, including dusting the baseboards with Pledge.
Yes. Oh my God.
Damn, she took it back with Pledge though. Pledge.
My mom had this shelf of what they call tchotchkes.
Yes.
And everything had to go back into its particular place after it was cleaned off.
Yep. You take them off.
Oh my God.
You take them off. You clean it down. Then you clean the things and you put them back.
You had to put them back. And if they weren't perfect, oh Jesus.
Oh God. Yes. Daniel Calderon. Good morning, brother. He says, Monday through Friday, we used to do homework and then go outside to the street light turn on around 7, and the weekend stay in the house and clean. And yes, music. See?
Music saved my life.
Good brother, man. He understands. And Dora Sanchez Soto says, I think our cultures are difficult. Our culturisms are difficult when your family is uniting cultures. We were the first from Mexico to settle in Aurora in 1969. We also blared our music and had to watch cartoons with our shoes on. I can relate. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody has it, man. Everybody has those. Everybody's got that, man. Okay. Now, here's the thing. We got time for this. Is social media helping or exacerbating the issues, in your opinion?
My personal opinion is it is not meant for children.
Hmm.
And when I say that, I don't mean children under the age of 10. I say children in general. And if you ask a doctor for the definition of a child, it's anyone under the age of 25, actually.
Hmm.
And when I think of Instagram, all these models that portray themselves with these bodies that are made, and you have these young girls looking at these women like, I don't fit that criteria, and feeling unworthy and not enough, then we have a problem. And when you have all this social media, like you said, portraying this lifestyle of what life is supposed to be like, or that you can become this overnight success on YouTube or TikTok, and all these children thinking, you know, this is what I want my life to be, and then not making it, all we do is set our children up for disappointment and failures. And failures isn't a bad thing, because I tell my son this all the time. You have to fail in life in order to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But we want them to strive for something that's real, that's attainable, you know. And if they fall back, they're going to pick themselves up and start over. But the reality is, like, what you see on social media is not real.
Right.
And, you know, there's a lot of times you'll see, even like on TikTok, you'll see videos of people crying, and you'll look through the comments and people are bashing them because they're being genuine about what they're going through. And I'm like, but that's just it. On social media, we see the good stuff. We don't see the bad stuff. You know, I can post all day about the studio, about the kids, about everything, but I'm not going to post when I'm having a breakdown.
Right.
I'm not going to post when I'm in my room crying and I haven't gotten out of bed in 2 days, because I don't want anybody to know that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the mentality almost. Like, I want everybody to see my good stuff. I want everybody to see that life is grand.
Right.
But life isn't always grand.
And if you keep trying to put on that show like it is, you will do yourself more harm than anything. Because once the facade crumbles, it's going to crumble on you. You know, when you're living in the house made of nothing and it crumbles, you're the guy in the living room. It's going to fall on you. And that's something else, too. Going back to the self-esteem issue. And the reason, and well, not the reason, but the self-esteem issue and sometimes the lack thereof, which keeps compounding these issues for young people, making them try to chase, you know, unrealistic realities. And it's like, when all of that crashes, then harming myself could potentially be a solution. Or
that and you know, well, I'll talk about that when we get to the girls' conference, but that's has to do with my theme this year.
Okay. Talk about the girls' conference. We there now. We've been doing this all episode. That's kind of weird, though. Like, you end it and I pick it up. We do good here.
So a part of my biggest thing this year with the, you know, every year I do kind of like a theme. So this year, or this is last year's shirt, and it says, "I'm just here to adjust her crown."
Oh, I like that.
And the reason is because sometimes we don't realize that we need people in our lives to kind of direct us and guide us. I've had a life coach. I've had a spiritual coach. I've had lots of coaches in the last couple of years, but because I needed that direction. And so this year's theme coincides with last year's, but it's also about your tribe and about your self-worth. Because I think a lot of times we set ourselves up to think that we're not good enough. And going back to culture, I grew up in an abusive, toxic home. I took a lot of the abuse from my mom so that my brothers wouldn't have to deal with it. But the biggest thing was, because I was the oldest, the biggest thing that I realized throughout the years was it definitely impacted my self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
Because for many years, I always felt like I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't, you know, just enough in general for a lot of things. And so now this year, that's my theme for this year's self-worth, because I feel like there's so many girls out there that just are lacking that relationship with dads, that are lacking that relationship with, you know, some type of positive role model in their life. When you think about Black and brown communities, how many people can you like think off the top of your head that are true role models that kids can reach out to and kind of observe?
Well, I can think of a good number, but I get what you're saying. I think a larger issue though with it too is that they're not put forward. You know, that baseball card is not sitting in the window. You know,
Exactly.
That's kind of one of the reasons Good Morning Aurora existed. I was hearing all these great stories, but who are you? Dan Barrero?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, how am I just hearing about this?
So that's what I do in the girls' conference. I bring them in. So we're going to have, I want to say it's like 5 or 6 speakers.
Right.
They're going to come in. They're going to talk about different things, hygiene. They're going to talk about self-worth. They're going to talk about their trials and tribulations of what they encountered in life and how they got past them. And that's what I want them to see is not Instagram, not TikTok, not Facebook. I want them to see real people in a real world that can show them, like, I was where you were and I got past that. And also just incorporate that feeling of worth.
Right.
Because I can honestly say growing up, that was something I lacked.
Right.
And so now I'm at a point where it's like, that's been my biggest mission that I've been doing the girls conference. I don't know, 5-6 years now. That has been the premise behind it is I don't want any girl to feel that they are not worthy.
Right. No, I think I totally applaud that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think a lot of it has to do with who we surround ourselves with, the music that we listen to.
Yes, very true.
You know, like the mindset. There's so many different things that affect us as a person. And if we're not putting ourselves in those positive situations and those positive people and that positive music, then what are we doing?
Norma Peterson, good morning. Michael Rafer says, may I volunteer for that event?
It's girls only, sorry.
Right. Oh. We don't got a want button, but we'll scratch it up for you. Right?
I've been wanting to do a boys one. My brother especially wants to do a boys one, but we'd have to find enough people to kind of step up and take charge.
Okay. Well, I like to volunteer. Well, we can chop that up. That'll be another time. Time's 8:54. Yes, it feels good to. It feels good to be able to look back on one's life and be able to see, it was projection. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. You know, just like I see it all now with clairvoyance, and I try to use it every single day to make me a better person, a better parent, and a more effective individual, especially in my job, because I see it now. You know, when I was young, I remember my grandmother didn't have heat many times, and so the oven being open and getting heat out of there.
Oh yeah,
that right.
I blew it up on myself one time.
You know, that's nothing. Having sugar and water and lemons, but not money for lemonade. So making sugar water with lemon. I mean, that's right. Who's not doing that? And you look at so many things now.
Tortillas with butter.
Exactly.
We didn't have no food. Yep. It was tortillas and butter.
And in my household, like it was, you know, we had the normal level of toxicity. I can remember certain things, but when my parents divorced, like I see now, like it really broke my dad, and he became a jerk. More than dads already are. Like dads are supposed to be jerks a little bit. And you know, for my mom, I think for her, and I look at it now, especially with, you know, and I'm a big proponent of that, women shouldn't be in relationships that are just not beneficial for, which I don't know if it was that deep, but I think for my mom, and my family's real religious, I think for her, the impetus to just want to, you know, divorce or break up out of a relationship was probably that gut-wrenching feeling that didn't make it feel good anyway. You know what I'm saying?
That's like a whole nother conversation there.
Exactly. What was the win? There was no win. You know what I'm saying? Because life now as a single mom.
I was just going to say
with
that.
2 kids, there was no win. You know
Single
what I'm saying?
Single mom, 2 kids. Now she has to provide for the entire family.
Exactly.
Be stressed out.
Right. And I remember me, like, because I wasn't trying to hear it no more from 2 parents.
Yeah.
My reaction was just say F both of them and all of it. And I just stopped going home after a while. And that was like kind of the beginning. But what I'm looking at now from my 30,000 vantage point feet is like, that's what it was. For me, it was just saying like, you know what? Then fine then. Like I got it myself. Like I don't need to, you know, I don't need to be dealing with.
But that's the thing is then we get to a point where almost like that shutdown. It's like, okay, I don't want to deal with that anymore because it's just too much. Right. So now I'm going to just fend for myself.
Exactly.
And then what happens is when another situation comes up, how do you ask for that help that we were talking about?
Exactly. And it's a compounding of issues. That's what I learned from Lieutenant Travis Hooker of the Elgin PD. It's a compounding of issues. He's talking about people that he sees with mental health issues going in and out of jail. It's a compounding of issues.
It's a circle.
It's
a cycle. I mean, it's literally like, the divorce, and then they think they can do it by themselves, and then it's this, and then it's that, and then maybe they break off a relationship, and then it's just a cycle. And it's like, when does it become enough?
Yeah, and
when do we say, I need help?
And I remember one day, and I'll never forget that. I remember the day my mom, I was like in 6th grade, I think. So. My parents divorced in like 5th grade, so maybe it was like 6th or 7th grade or something like that. It was middle school. And I remember my mom came home and she lost her job.
Oh.
Yeah, and we're gonna go to a camera because I'm not gonna let these people see me cry. Yeah, I remember that, and I remember being young, right? And I didn't have a job. But I remember, like, when she started crying, I started crying because I knew I was smart enough to know at least that, like, I got the oh shit moment. You feel me? I got the moment. I understood that it's her egg now, and she's got to carry that, and she's got, like, I understood it.
But then think about that, what you just said. Now think of every child in Aurora that when their parent goes through a divorce, parent goes through losing a job, parent goes through whatever it is that they're going through. Now they feel almost that responsibility of like, how do I help? How do I take care of this? And then, as parents, your mom losing a job, she probably cried it out, and then she's like, okay, now I got to suck it up and move on.
Yeah, that was it, because we didn't lose that house.
Exactly.
So I don't know how to help. Right.
So now that kid is stuck with those emotions because they don't know how to process those emotions at that age.
Right. Yeah. And and now in the work that I do with
it's your purpose.
Your life comes full circle.
It's your purpose.
Now I'm sitting here in this office with this lady who's crying.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I get it, lady. I get it more than you. We may not, we may have a translator here, right? Because I don't speak Spanish good, but the story is the exact same, and I get it. The time is 9:00.
Oh, wow.
Dang.
Before we end, I have 17 tickets left for my girls' conference.
All right, hold on. Let's bring the camera back on. Dang. It's amazing. Yeah,
the
tickets.
hour went by fast.
It did go by fast. Holy cow. Tickets. You got 17 tickets?
17 tickets left, because my goal was, and this has been my goal for a while, I've been wanting to have a room with at least 100 people in it, and I put up 100 ticket sales, and I have 17 left.
All right. Okay. And
join me.
Yes, Eventbrite.
Yes.
Simply Destinee.
Girls I Am Empowerment.
Girls I Am Empowerment. Now it's also on your Facebook page.
Yes.
So everybody can go like and follow the Facebook page for Simply Destinee Youth Center. I gotta say shout out to Martin Luna.
Yes.
Shout out Marty. Good brother. Good man. He's always doing many great things.
Yes.
Always a good, positive force in the community. Okay. Well, this was
interesting.
This was an interesting conversation. It really was. The show ends on a positive note. What is your message today for the people of Aurora before you come back for a part 2 and 3 and 4 and 5?
The one thing I tell the kids all the time is you never know what the person next to you is going through. So be kind. Like, just showing these kids that there's hope out there and to not give up. Because I'm pretty sure there was as many times I could have gave up. But I kept going, and Marty kept me going. But the reality is there's hope and there's help. You just got to ask for it.
Amen to that. Karen Hoffman Fontana, good morning to you as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you guys have a blessed day, a positive day, and I hope that you guys can really take something from today's conversation. It was absolutely wonderful. Please follow Simply Destinee on Facebook and Instagram. As a matter of fact, check them out everywhere, and get ready for the I Am Empowered conference.
Yes.
Coming very soon.
August 6th.
August 6th. Get your tickets. 17 left. Take care of yourself and each other.